الله أكبر الله أكبر.
Assalamu alaikum and welcome to the Islamic Center at New York University podcast, coming to you straight from the heart of New York City. We're building an amazing Muslim community here at ICNYU where everyone is welcomed and respected no matter where you're from or where you're at. This is the place to be. So open your ears and your heart and come along with us on another life-changing journey. Bismillah.
Assalamu alaikum, everyone. Thank you so much for your patience. I really appreciate you all being here today. I could sit here and spend everyone's time explaining the interesting series of events that happened today. But the reality is, you know what, life happens sometimes. And I think it's actually quite relevant to the topic of discussion today, right? Because I could share with you everything that happened on my way here, and it's all true. But at the end of the day, all you're going to remember is the speaker was late. And hopefully you're also going to say, but then it was worth it. All right, so let's get going right away. We're going to jump into this. Again, I really appreciate you all taking the time. I really hope you find value. It is really my blessing and my honor to be able to serve this community. I have quite a bit of content to go through. I'm going to get through the content as quickly as I can, and then we're going to open it up to questions. So take notes if you can. Think about whatever questions you have about the different topics that I'm going to touch on. Again, we're going to try to get through this as quickly as possible because I really want to leave time for discussion. And thank you to Brother Abdul Kareem for holding a discussion. I hope that you all found value in sharing with each other. I always find that I learn as much from you as hopefully I can impart some nuggets of knowledge here that you can apply today. All right, so in this workshop, I will share some very practical advice that you can implement today, right? This workshop, we're going to be tying things back to the Islamic, principles, but this is really meant to be very practical, right? The lessons that I'm going to share with you today are lessons that I've learned from a career spanning almost 2 decades, both working in various corporate and not-for-profit sectors, as well as coaching thousands of people across many, many different industries and life, as well as working closely with senior management across a similar spectrum of experiences, right? So these are all things that I've actually learned on the job or things that I've worked with, either with clients or mentees, et cetera, right? So, what you're gonna find is, a lot of these lessons that I learned, quote unquote, the hard way, going through these careers, learning these things, they tie directly back to the things that you've been taught, throughout, Islam. For those of you who were born into Islam, or those of you who came into Islam, a lot of the things that you're going to hear a lot of very similar themes, and I'm really going to try to tie that together. If anyone wants to move closer, please move closer. All right, so first topic, I want to talk about reputation management. This is key. Right, and everything I'm going to talk about today is going to tie back to this topic, right, of reputation management. Don't allow others to decide how you're perceived. You can direct that through intentional action. Okay, it's not about what you say; it's about what you do. Okay, people pay more attention to your actions than the words that come out of your mouth. Just like kids, more is caught than taught, right? And as much as you don't realize it, people are always watching you. Especially when we talk about a corporate setting, people are always watching you. Even when you think that they're not, they're watching you. And not only are they watching you, but they're talking about you. And it's important that we all understand this, right? Because when we understand this, then we can be mindful about what the content of those conversations that are happening. Sometimes behind closed doors, sometimes by, the proverbial water cooler, okay? So it's very, very important that we take this very seriously, because you can spend a decade, 2 decades building an excellent reputation, and it can take you about 5 minutes to destroy it, right? So as we talk about, all of these things about how we manage our reputation, right? This is something that is active, that we constantly have to be practicing, right? Just like our tradition encourages us to, we live, we make mistakes, make tawbah, take the lesson, and Allah encourages us Once you take the lesson and you make tawbah, you ask for sincere forgiveness, move on. Move on with your life, right? Don't stay within, the pain of, oh, I made this mistake, or this and that happened, right? These things happen to us as an opportunity to learn. Okay? Now, it's important to be, in the context of professional development, which is the context of this conversation today, it's important to be aware of the aspects of your reputation that are important to your career growth. Okay? You can either learn this from your management teams, your leadership teams, looking at the folks that are actually running your companies, right? What are the things that are important to them? Whether they're talking about it in speeches within your company, on videos, or within, the annual reports that the CEO letter writes a letter, any public company, there's a CEO letter where the CEO says, hey, this is what's important to me. This is what's keeping me up at night. These are the opportunities I see in our company. I looked at a study once. I think over 95% of people in companies don't read their CEO letter. This is the person who's running your company, right? He's telling you exactly what they're thinking about in 5 to 10 to 15 to 20 pages, right? Why wouldn't you take 10, 15 minutes to learn that? One of the first pieces of advice I give people when they're preparing for an interview, right? Read the CEO letter. You're going to be in some cases, more knowledgeable about what's going on in that company than the person that's interviewing you. It's important that we don't make assumptions about what's important in our organizations. Just ask, right? Sometimes you'll see a manager, right? A middle manager might say, oh, this is important. Doing this, taking this action, going to this place is important. You might hear other things from other people, or you might make assumptions just saying, oh, this person seems to be successful because they're doing maybe some things that seem to me to be unethical, but they seem to be benefiting, right? So you might start making assumptions of, hey, this unethical behavior is being rewarded and incentivized, so maybe that's what I need to do to be successful. Well, it's important, right, that we don't make those kinds of assumptions, right? That we ask good questions, that we pay attention to the people in our organizations that are actually successful, and we pay attention to who we're modeling our behavior after. Okay. And again, I'm really emphasizing this point because it's extremely important. Protect your reputation. Your reputation will either open doors for you in this life, or it will close doors, both professionally and personally. Protect your reputation. Many of us, we spend all this time with our colleagues, right, at work, and we start to blur the lines between personal and professional relationships, and that's okay. You can be friends with your coworkers. But remember that they're your coworker. So don't offer compromising information or secrets about yourself to someone who can potentially later become an enemy. You just don't know what's going to happen with that relationship, right? Don't offer compromising information or secrets about yourself, right? Allah sometimes chooses to cover our flaws for us and helps us to appear as blessing from Him, helps us to appear to others better than what we are. And sometimes we might have a kind of imposter complex from this, or an inferiority complex from this. But the reality is, our perception, our tradition teaches us, is determined by Allah. So if you have some flaw, something that you're struggling with, and no one knows it, well, guess what? There's barakah in that from Allah. There's blessing in that from Allah. Allah is covering for you until you can, again, in our tradition teaches us constant improvement. Allah doesn't ask us to be perfect, but He does ask us to improve. He does ask us to look at ourselves and to not make the same mistakes over and over again, right? So it's important that we're mindful of these things. Okay? Again, it's really important that you're thoughtful about the relationships in your life, right? If these are folks that you're working with, right? Anything can happen at any time. You just you never know, right? You can be close with your coworkers, but be mindful of your tongue. Don't share personal information that can be used against you in the future. If the relationship sours, or if they're otherwise incentivized by promotion or advancement or whatever to betray you, don't give them more fuel to do so, okay? So again, just be mindful about the things that you're talking about in your life, the people that you trust, right? And we all have those people in our lives that we can, quote unquote, vent to, right? We should aim to be people that are positive, right? That are not complaining, right? That are more focused on the blessings in our life, right? And learning and benefiting from the tribulations that Allah puts in our lives to help us grow, okay? But we all sometimes need that person to vent to, right? We do. We're social creatures. We need to share, right? And it's good for the heart to do that, but just pick the right person, right? And once again, you're gonna hear a lot of repetition, right? Because this is important. People are always watching you, even when you don't think they are. They're always watching you. I always used to joke with my interns, an internship is a 10-week interview. It's a 10-week interview. You have 10 weeks to prove yourself. And every last moment that you're there, they're watching what time you're coming in, what time you're leaving, what you're doing. Everyone's watching you, right? So again, keep these things in mind. Okay, so that's reputation management. Again, we're going to go quickly through this. We'll come back on questions at the end here. All right, so next I want to talk about excellent character, the importance of excellent character. And this ties right into reputation management, right? Because this is going to determine how you're perceived, right? The content of your character. So I want to start with the hadith from the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam, who said, "The best among you are those who have the best manners and character." The best among you are those who have the best manners and character. Notice he didn't say the best among you are the ones with the most money, or the best dressed, or any of these things that oftentimes we're so focused on in our lives, right? Dr. Martin Luther King said he had a dream that one day we would be judged not on the color of our skin, but on the content of our character, right? So character is extremely important, right? And it's a journey for all of us. Again, we're not necessarily asked to be perfect, but we're asked to constantly improve, right? The course of a career, I was 22 coming in my career. I thought I was doing my whole boss's job. I thought I knew everything. I was guilty of that. The reality is I maybe saw 10% of what my boss did, right? So we have to be careful with arrogance too, right? We have to keep our hearts open, keep our minds open, and always be open to learning. And that is relevant as well when it comes to your character, right? No one is above, improving, right? There's nothing that you can do in this life, based on what we learn in our tradition, that you can't then ask forgiveness, make tawbah, learn from, and then improve, right? So always remember, there's always an opportunity to improve, even if you're struggling with something. So practice good manners and behaviors, okay? Be truthful. Be honest. Have integrity. Treat people well, right? Be kind. Smile. These are things that don't cost us very much, right? There are days, we all have them. There are days that I walk around, I'm feeling tired, I'm feeling down. I don't want to smile. I don't want to be social, but guess what? Sometimes life or business forces me to, right? So yes, I have to put some effort to flex the muscles in my face to give a smile to people, but it's going to make an impact on how they perceive you, right? It doesn't cost you anything to smile, but it can do wonders for people. There are people that walk around, they might be walking around, their head is down, maybe they're being short with you, maybe you don't know what's happening in their life. Maybe they just lost someone. Maybe they went through some sort of trauma or tragedy. You don't know, right? And the best thing you can do for that person is to be kind to them, even if they're not being kind to you, because it doesn't cost you anything, but there's everything to gain from it. Okay, so be kind, smile. The Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam, in the Sunnah, he's always known to be smiling, right? And I want to share another hadith on kindness. I'm going to just share some of these hadiths that I pulled from my research, right? Again, I'm really focused on the practical lessons from like real world experience here. But again, I'm just tying it back to, the lessons that are already there, And when we talk about modeling behavior, right, we hear that the Prophet, is the walking Quran, right? The best of he modeled behaviors for all kinds of believers, right? So we have this amazing example, within our, tradition, but also, as I said, yes, it's great that we have that, but we also have the example of the people in our lives today that we might want to model, right? And making sure that we're being mindful about who we're choosing. So on kindness, the Prophet ﷺ said, kindness is not to be found in anything, but that it adds its beauty. Kindness is not to be found in anything, but that it adds to its beauty. And it is not withdrawn from anything, but that it makes it defective. Okay, so bottom line here is, again, I'm not trying to interpret a hadith here, but the bottom line is, kindness, and we all know this to be true in our lives, it makes everything better. So be kind. Smiling is sadaqah, right? We've all heard these things. Now, how does this translate to work, right? Because that's why we're here. So I've had a variety of experiences in my life. Oftentimes I've been put in a position where I needed people to do things for me who didn't necessarily work for me. They didn't have any kind of line of responsibility to me or anything, but I still had to figure out how to get these folks to do things for me, right? My boss used to joke when he had to do something difficult. He would say, "Hey, Alexander, I need you to use your charisma to get this done." I learned this lesson early on in my career. I remember I called a colleague of mine, and she answered the phone, "What do you want?" And I took a pause there because I did need something. And I said, "I have a problem here. I don't have a relationship with this person, and I'm about to ask them for something." And I didn't actually need it until the next day. So I said, "Oh no, I noticed that you work in London, and we hadn't really had a chance to chat. So I just wanted to introduce myself. I'm this and this. I work in this area, and I just wanted to say hi." And she just stayed quiet for about 20 seconds, and she said, "Oh wow, thank you." And I am telling you, we had a 45-minute conversation where she told me about her family, her kids, her whole life story. And I sat there and I listened, and it was interesting, right? You get to learn about someone. The next morning, about 9:30 a.m., I called this woman, and she said, "Alexander, so nice to hear from you." I said, "Hey, I'm so sorry to bother you. I need this thing. I know you're busy. Whenever you have time, if you can please do it." 10 minutes later, it was in my inbox. Now think about if you're a chief operating officer who has to manage a team, or a chief of staff who has to manage people, right? Who have other competing priorities, things that they need to do, but you need them to also do what you need to do, right? In my career, I've worked with countless number of clients who I've taught this lesson to and who have benefited from it, right? People like to do things for people they like. So be likable, right? It's gonna make your life so much easier, right? If someone likes you, they're gonna want to do something for you. They're gonna want to help you. So be likable. And being likable, right? When in a room when everyone's complaining, be the source of light. Be the person who's positive. "Hey, we're gonna get through this, everyone. I know we're having a tough time. We're gonna get through this." It will make all the difference in the world, right? And again, for those of you who don't know, this is a 4-part series. So today we're going to really be focused on behaviors and again, how some of these things that maybe don't seem like they will make all the impact in your career, they will. Because at the end of the day, you'll see countless people who get stuck at that middle manager level, right? That vice president, executive director, and they can't break past, right? And they think, "Oh, I do such an amazing job. My work is so amazing. I've been consistent." I have clients over 20 years executive director. After working with me for 8 months, guess what? They got that managing director. In some cases, they doubled or increased their salary by 50%, right? Why? What changed? Because they understood that the folks that were making the decision on who becomes a managing director, there is a character assessment that happens at that level. Because guess what? You're not going to get to middle management. You're not going to be put in a position to lead people unless you're doing an excellent job. So that's understood. You're not going to even be considered, you're not going to be talked about unless your work is excellent. So what is it that separates those who succeed at the top, quote unquote, of these organizations versus those who constantly seem to be hitting a ceiling? There's a character assessment that happens, right? There's criteria that you're being evaluated on that aren't necessarily based on your technical skills in your work. And again, I'm saying this not because I'm guessing or because I read a book or something. It's because I've spent time with CEOs. I've spent time with their leadership teams. I've been in the room where people are talking about who's going to get the managing director promotion, who's not. So I've been there and I've sat there and I've been involved in those discussions. And I'm telling you, everyone I've ever worked with, it's always been the same. Is this person trustworthy? One person that I worked with, you know why they didn't get an opportunity? Because there were 20 people in that room and one person said, "I never heard of that person." That was it, conversation over. Now, there was no line of work that those people had any reason to interact. But they said, "Hey, this person is at this level of this organization, and this person who's also at this level of this organization has never heard of them. So that means that that person isn't networked enough in this situation." And that was enough to close an opportunity for this person. That was a whole other year that they had to wait. Okay? So moving on quickly here, choose your role models, right? This is what we've been talking about. Who do you want to emulate? Do you want to emulate the middle manager who's stuck in middle management, who's insisting that there's no upward mobility here for you unless you go to the happy hour, right? Who's telling you that things are important to them, right? But yet you see that they're hitting the ceiling. Do you want to emulate that person? Or do you want to emulate the CEO whose time needs to be booked 6 months in advance, who's not showing up to any of these happy hours? You're not going to see the CEO of the company or a lot of these senior management folks hanging out after 6 p.m. They're going home. They're going to spend time with their family, right? So how is it that they got there if it's so important for us to be in these spaces right after work? Turns out there's another way, right? And this is one of the things that I love to share, right? You don't need to be in those spaces to network. There's nothing that stops you, and this is very important, again, talking about practical. One of the first things you need to do when you walk into an organization is understand who are the decision makers. Who are the people who actually are making the decisions? Sometimes that is your direct manager, and sometimes your direct manager has no real power. They'll go into a room and they'll say what they say about you, and it's somebody else is making the decision. That's often the case, right? So who are the decision makers? Is it the manager's manager? Is it your manager's manager's manager? Is it someone who you don't even interact with, right? Who's looking at a spreadsheet and deciding, okay, we got to cut 10%, right? And do you want to be a name on a piece of paper that person has never interacted with? Or do you want to be this person that, hey, I had coffee, maybe it's 10 minutes, maybe it's 15 minutes, people are busy, but I had coffee with this person, and all of a sudden Mariam isn't just a name on a piece of paper anymore. Mariam has expressed, is now a person to me. It's much easier to let a name on a piece of paper go than someone you've actually met and interacted with and like, right? So here's another secret to job security, right? A little hack. And again, I'm telling you, because I've been in that room, they've been working on that spreadsheet, and they're like, oh no, I know that person. Replace the name with someone I don't know. Literally, these things happen, right? When people are deciding who gets paid the extra bit of bonus, who gets the promotion, right? So again, yes, be excellent in your work. That is extremely important. But also make sure that people know what you're doing, right? Now I'm gonna tell a little story here, right? And then this ties back to the reputation management. Early in my career, JPMorgan Chase, I had a perception problem. I was told this for a year and a half, performance review after performance review. Oh, you have a perception problem. And I would ask my manager, what does that mean? I don't know. You're amazing. I work with you directly. I don't know what people are talking about. You have a perception problem. Okay. The next person I'm working, oh, you have a perception problem, right? I went through two different managers. And then finally, I worked directly with the head of the team. So like my boss's boss's boss. On a project, people were out, et cetera, right? So I had an opportunity to work for 4 months on this project. And at the end of this 4 months, he says, you know what? Your work is amazing, but you have this perception problem. And at that point, I broke. I'm being honest. This was very early in my career. I was like 20, maybe 24, 25. And I'm like, people have been telling me I have a perception problem, but nobody can explain to me what it is. And he said, you know what? I've been working with you directly. I can't tell you what it is either. You're awesome. But you have a problem and you need to fix it. And here's how you fix it.
So
I'm
going to leave you guys with this one. The usage of time disconnects the value of prayer. Put that seminary in your brain. I'm out.
Thank you very much. Appreciate you being here.
So he lets you be with the thought that you have the perception.
Yes, thank you.
Nobody can tell me what it is.
You have a perception problem. I don't know what it is, but here's what you need to do to fix it. You need to meet with all of these folks who were within the management. At this point, I was in the commodities business. So he said, set up meetings with these folks and let them see what I see. And I think that's going to take care of your perception problem. So that's exactly what I did. I had 9 different heads of businesses. I set up meetings with all of them. And here's what I did in this meeting. They were 15-minute calls that, of course, became 45 minutes each. And I said, hey, just wanted to meet you. I'm so-and-so. I'm Alexander Almonte. I work, again, at this point, I was in planning and analysis. I just really wanted to get to know you. I would love to know your story. How did you get to where you are? People love to talk about themselves. People will talk and talk and talk if you let them. And you can benefit from them, right? Because these are leaders in your organization. And most leaders will be willing, if you ask, to give to give you time. I've had so many clients that say, oh no, I can't ask my boss's boss's boss. I can't go over my boss's head and ask so-and-so. Yes, of course you can. And if your boss has a problem with it, that's even more of an incentive to, go out and do and be strategic in your networking, right? So I set up all these meetings. I met with all these folks. 15-minute conversations were set up, 45 minutes of them talking about themselves. And then after, they told me their whole life story. Listening is a very, very powerful tool. And then they said, so who are you? And I was ready. All I needed was 2 minutes. My name's Alexander Almonte. I'm in planning and analysis. I work on these things, and this particular thing touches your business. So if you have any questions or you need anything, call me. Every single one of those conversations, you know what happened? Oh, you worked on that? Oh, you did that? Oh, you did that project? You created that report? I had no idea. I thought it was so-and-so. I thought it was so-and-so. Here's another tidbit. People all around you will be more than happy to take credit for your work if you let them. And it doesn't matter what their intentions are. Don't make assumptions about intentions, right? People are going to do this, though. It's going to happen. And I'm sure many of you it's happened, right? People are more than happy to take credit for your work. They're going to do it, right? So how do you manage that? You have to make sure, again, strategically, figuring out who are the decision makers, who are the people who are going to have an impact on your career, and you, in a strategic way, just like I did in this story, right? It's networking. We're just talking about our lives, our careers, and hey, by the way, here's what I do for you on a daily basis. If you need anything, let me know. I didn't say, oh, so-and-so have been taking credit for my work. And no, that's not how you do this, right? I do this for you. Let me know if you need anything. All of a sudden, all these folks were already benefiting from my work, but they had no idea that it was coming from me. Poof, goodbye perception problem. I went from, normal meets to exceeds expectations within 2 months. Literally 2 months was my end of year evaluation after that. Guess what happens when you're top versus in the middle? 12.5% raise versus times are tough. We can't give you, yeah. This is again, we're going to talk about very briefly in this session, and we'll get more into it in a future session, performance management. When people understand your value, they're going to want to pay you. And when you can effectively communicate your value, quantify it in the best ways, and as much as you possibly can, you will get paid, you will get promoted, you will get opportunities, right? And by the same vein, it's important that you not only figure out, hey, who are the decision makers in this organization? Do they know who I am? Do they understand what kind of value I'm bringing to the organization? Right? But also, it's important that unless you want someone else to direct your career for you, you need to direct your career, which means you need to decide, where do you want to go? Because when all these opportunities are coming up, early in my career, I had an opportunity to move to Hong Kong. Who got that opportunity? The guy who was saying, I want to go to Hong Kong. If there's ever an opportunity to go to Hong Kong, he was one of the first people approached, and he went to Hong Kong, right? So you will miss out on all the opportunities nobody knows that you want. So make sure that you communicate what your goals are, what your objectives are, the opportunities you want, because when people then go and say, hey, this opportunity is available, who should we approach? Oh, Khalid said he wants to go to Hong Kong. Abdul Karim said he wants to move to London. We have this opportunity in London. Let's talk to him. Maybe he wants to do this. And by the way, he's doing great work. Another very short anecdote. I remember the CFO, who was, again, this is like 4, 5, or 6 different skip levels ahead of me. So I just saw him walking to the restroom. Again, I'm not making these things up. So I followed him to the restroom, and I started a conversation with him. Oh, how are you doing? What are you working on? And I told him, you did that? I had no idea. I thought it was so-and-so. No joke, 2 days later, this man came to me. I can't find your boss. Did you work on this report too? Because you told me you did this one. I was like, yeah, actually, I did that report. Can you come into my office? All of a sudden, now I'm working directly with the CFO. Right? And for those of you who read my bio, again, everything that I have, everything I've been in this life is thanks to Allah. Right? It's thanks to the grace of Allah. There's nothing that I've done that makes me special. There's nothing that I've done that anyone else can't do, right? But why did I achieve these very fast promotions? Number one, I made mistakes and I learned from them, and I did not repeat them. And that's very important, right? It's okay to make mistakes, but don't be that person who's making excuses for your mistakes. Own up to them and explain about how it's not going to happen again. because you don't want to be that person who's known for making excuses. So that's one. You make the mistake. It's okay. Learn from it. Don't repeat it. And the don't repeat it part is the important part. Don't repeat it. And then be open to feedback. Whatever anyone says, information is power, right? You may not agree with it, but now you know that people are thinking of you about you in that way. Now you can actually do something about it because you know. But if you start getting defensive and you're not someone who's open to receiving feedback, then you're never going to know how people are thinking about you because no one's going to have the courage to tell you. Because at the end of the day, everybody's afraid of getting sued, right? Everybody's afraid of this or that or whatever, right? So they're not going to be honest with you. And when you don't have full information or at least some information, how do you navigate, right? So be open to feedback. So learn quickly, make mistakes quickly, learn fast. Communicate my value to the people making the decisions and then telling people what I want. I walked in there, I was 22 years old. I said, I want a promotion. I want a title. And they're like, you just got here. I'm like, well, I've been interning all this. I just kept asking. It took 2 years, but I made director at 24 years old. Most of the directors at AIG at the time, they were in their 30s. I made it at 24. Why? Because I asked for it. Right? I went to JPMorgan Chase 2 years later. I made vice president. Why? Again, because I was communicating with the people that were making the decisions. And I went through 4 different managers in 2 years. All who said, yeah, promotion. The next one come in, oh, so-and-so said, what else? And again, when we're talking about promotion, right, how do you approach that conversation? All right, so we're going to talk about performance management in a second. But the bottom line is people knew what I wanted. And so they were saying, okay, you're at this level now. If you do these additional things, then you'll be at the promotion level. And here's another secret. The secret to getting promoted is you need to be doing the job already before anyone's going to give you the promotion, right? Because nobody wants to, and here's the thing, you think, oh, people don't want to give me an opportunity. It's actually the opposite. People don't want to set you up for failure. Because the second you go from, let's say, again, making up titles here, you go from associate to vice president, let's say, right? Or all of a sudden, you're not being evaluated with the other associates anymore. You were an exceeds expectations, amazing, the best associate I've ever seen, but now all of a sudden they put you in that position, you're vice president, now you're a low performing vice president. Now they're putting you on, performance management plans, and potentially you might end up losing your work, your opportunity, right? Because you got an opportunity too early, something that you weren't ready for, okay? So to get promoted, you need to be doing the job already, okay? All right, so I've got just a few more things here. I'm going to go quickly here. The next one is be on time. There is a real cost to being late. And again, case in point here, right? There's a cost. Early in my career, I worked crazy hours, 12, 14-hour days. And I thought, well, I'm leaving the office at 1, 2 o'clock in the morning. I should be able to come in 5, 10 minutes, right? I need to get some sleep. I need to I need to survive. Guess what? All people saw, they didn't see me leaving at 1 o'clock, 2 o'clock in the morning because they weren't there. They saw me come in at 9:05 or 9:10, right? And so suddenly everyone's evaluating me. Everyone kind of puts me in the, that's the guy who shows up late category, right? And okay, that's one thing, right? But again, there's a real cost because what happened at the end of the year? I got all the excuses in my bonus conversation. The reality was I found out years later because my manager was honest with me. He said, I dinged you in your pay because you were late. And it pissed me off. His words, he said, it really angered me. He's like, that's not how I was brought in my career. So he's like, you have to have some consequence for it. But he never actually communicated to that, and that probably has to do with my fault and not being as open to feedback earlier in my career, right? But he gave me a gift, right? And what did I learn? And it took me years to learn this, right? You don't necessarily need to be the last one out of the office, but you better, be, if not the first, you better not be the last one in the office because it's gonna affect you in your ability to get opportunities, and it's gonna affect you in your pay. Okay, so be on time. And again, tying this back to our tradition, right? We talk about making our prayers on time, all this stuff, right? Being on time, there's a lot of benefit to it, right? And again, it's not about being perfect. If for those of you who struggle with this, just try to take steps to improve it, right? If you know that you're always half an hour late, give yourself 45 minutes to get somewhere, right? I used to hack myself, like setting my alarm, my clock back 5 minutes. So I was like always 5 minutes early or whatever the case, or 5 minutes later. So do whatever you need to do, but like give yourself extra time and try to be on time. Next, do what you say you're gonna do, right? We talk about character, we talk about consistency. One of the biggest things people are gonna judge you on is, are you trustworthy? Are you somebody that does what you say you're gonna do, right? And trustworthiness, it counts for so much. How is someone gonna trust you with responsibility over people, right? Or responsibility over a large budget, money, whatever the case is, whatever responsibility, if they can't trust you, right? If you say, I'm gonna do something and then you don't do it, what message are you sending? So be very, very careful. And Allah in the Holy Quran talks about this all the time, you know, don't break your contracts, don't break your agreements, don't break your promises. It's better for you not to make a promise than to make a promise and break it. These are the things that people judge us on, and rightfully so. So do what you say you're gonna do, and don't overcommit yourself. Some of us, we have this struggle. I had this struggle. I couldn't say no, and it hurt me. This is the reality. That hurts you. It's better to say no and to protect your reputation than to overcommit yourself and to, you know, ruin your reputation, okay? So keep your promises. Seek truth. Keep things in perspective. Don't make bad assumptions without full information. Here's another one, right? This is hard for you to hear, right? Because we all suffer this, and all immigrant communities, all whatever. We have this idea that we're being treated unfairly. Here's the truth. Sometimes that happens. Business is people. I always say all business is people in a room trying to get something done. So people are people. People are going to do people things, right? So don't be super surprised when people do things that people do, right? Try your best to surround yourself with people of strong character, good morals, and, you know, people that are generally going to do the right thing, and you're going to experience less of that, right? But at the end of the day, most of these things are not personal that happen to you in your career. They are business. And it is important to keep that in perspective, because if you get all up in your feelings and you're feeling hurt and this and, oh, this person did this or this person said that, or, you know, you're making all these assumptions about someone's bad intentions, and meanwhile they made a business decision that they didn't take into consideration your feelings at all, because it's business. And this is very freeing, right? Because all of a sudden you can, you know, behave similarly, right? So don't take things personally. Don't get bogged down in your feelings and assume that someone is personally after you. If it's in a business setting, chances are there's a business reason for it. And it's best for you to stay neutral and ask for information, right? Because information is power. Don't get angry. Easier said than done, right? Manage your anger if you're someone that struggles with it. We all have our own struggles. We all have our gifts, right? Some of us struggle with this, right? So just some really quick tips to kind of manage your anger, right? So just a question here. Some of you, like, let's just wake up. Let's have a little bit of audience participation here. How many of you ever get angry? Just raise your hand. Have ever experienced it? How many of you have ever felt physically hot when you're getting angry? You feel that heat? Yes? Okay. Have you ever observed someone who's angry and do you see them physically turning red? Some of us are a little more transparent on this than others, right? So what am I trying to say here, right? The essence of anger is fire. And where does fire come from? Where do we know it comes from? Anyone? Say it out loud. Anyone? Sorry? Jahannam, okay. What else? Iblis, Shaitan, right? We have this benefit in our tradition, right, that we understand where some of these things are coming from, right? You feel the physical manifestation of heat, right? And what happens to heat? When you see a flame, you see a candle, right? What's it doing? It's rising. So what do you see when someone's getting angry? They're going to get up, right? You see them rising, right? So if you want to dissipate your anger, you do the opposite. You sit down. You lay down. Guess what? You're not going to be able to stay angry for very long. You have somewhere you can recline, just lay down. Lay down, breathe. Say, A'udhu billahi minash shaitanir rajim. Bismillahir rahmanir rahim. and allow your anger to dissipate. Self-awareness is so important. Okay? When we feel ourselves starting to get there, and when we're with someone we love, and this is the best opportunity to get angry. When love and anger and hate, these things are so close, in terms of the way we experience them, that they can often get, mixed up, right? And you're with someone you love, and suddenly you feel yourself getting angry or frustrated. Step away. Take a moment to say, you know what? I feel that heat. I see the red. I see that bulging. The prophet. I heard this story about the prophet, that he had a vein in the front of his face. Because the prophet, guess what? The prophet, sallallahu alaihi wasallam, peace be upon him, he got angry sometimes, right? And again, we're not going to get into all of that today, but there are times that it's okay to get angry, right? The person who dies protecting their family, this is sunnah as well, becomes a martyr, right? So there are times to get angry, right? When you're seeing injustice, when you're seeing, we are encouraged to stand up for justice, right? So there's a time and a place for anger, and that's why we have it, right? But it's important that we keep control of it and keep it in check, right? Be patient. And this is a big one for me. And I always say, Allah gets creative in the ways he gives us what we're asking for, and in the ways he tests us. Because today something happened that in the 37 years of life in New York City has never happened. The F train was rerouted onto the G line. It's literally never happened. Anytime it's rerouted somewhere heading into New York, into Manhattan. Today, a first ever happened, something I could not have predicted. And guess what? All the different things we tried to do to get here on time, it just didn't happen, right? We got stuck in rush hour traffic, blah, blah, blah. Who cares? Stuff happens. Life is going to happen because it's giving everything that happens to us. And this is something I'm constantly learning, and every day, alhamdulillah, I learn it better, right? Everything that happens in this life is for good, whether we recognize it in the moment or not. But when we take the time to be able to reflect on our lives and all the quote unquote bad that's happened to us, and we really reflect on all the growth that came from it later, if we're honest with ourselves, right? And all the good, of course, that comes into our lives, and all the good that it brings, right? That one's more obvious. But sometimes the tests come because Allah wants to teach us something. Allah wants to help us grow, okay? So don't be so quick to get upset about the test, And Hamza Yusuf said, patience, sabira, is in the moment that something happens. It's not in a year later. It's not a week later when you calm down. It's in that moment. And I had another opportunity today to be patient, because I started immediately, how could this happen of all days for the F to be rerouted onto the G line? And then immediately, and of course my lovely wife is here in my ear saying, it's okay, we're going to get, alhamdulillah. And I caught myself in that moment. Right? Because guess what? I pray every day, 5 times, maybe more a day, for Allah to increase me in patience. And guess what? He keeps giving me opportunities. So I just had to laugh. And a thing kept happening. They took the FDR north instead of south. Whoa, okay. We just had to laugh. I mean, at that point, it's like, okay, it's my own fault. I asked for this, right? And when we have that perspective on life, it's so much easier to deal with the things that happen, right? Everything is for good. Like, where's the lesson? All right, so be patient. All right, so this is the last thing here. Yes, perfect. Performance management. We're going to go through this really quickly, and we're going to dive into this in a future session, so don't worry. But I just want to give you some tidbits, again, that you can apply today. Performance management. They call it performance management because you have to manage your performance. Here's another secret. Your manager, who you're relying to remember all the good stuff you did this year, can't remember what you did 2 weeks ago, let alone what you did in January, let alone what you did in March, let alone what you did in April. He's relying on you because maybe you're the only person he manages or she manages. Or maybe they have 100 or 1,000 people that they manage. So how do you expect them to remember all the good things you did? This is why we have self-assessments in so many of these corporate settings. And how many of us, and be honest here, waited till the day before the self-assessment was due or a few days before to start working on it? Be honest, raise your hands high if you've ever done this. I want you all to understand that you cost yourselves money by doing that. by you not taking the time to really sit there and say, these are all the ways that I was amazing this year, because you don't remember, they're either going to conveniently forget or they're just not going to know. And the reality is most of the time it's the latter. They're just not going to remember, right? This is why some people use the tactic, and I don't recommend this, of, oh, I'm going to take it easy. I'm going to cruise until about July, August, and then I'm going to really turn it on. I'm going to be like amazing, and then that's all they're going to remember. And then some people, they come in, they're roaring and going, and then they run out of steam by August, and then the rest of the last quarter of the year, their performance slumps a little bit, and maybe their performance slump is still better than most of the people, but all they're going to see is, wow, they were here, now they're here, in consistency. So it's best to operate here at a level that you know you can maintain consistently throughout the year, and where it makes sense, raise it up a little bit, okay? So again, consistency is important. Strategic networking, all right, we talked about this. Identify the decision makers, identify the power brokers, identify the influential people in your organization. Make sure that they know who you are and what you're doing. Clearly communicate your value. How's your work helping and impacting them? Not you, them, right? Understand, who is this person in this organization? What matters to them? And communicate to them in that way, because all they care about is themselves most of the time, right? Again, this is business. Clearly communicate your goals and ambitions. Right? Do not leave this to chance. Someone else will manage your career for you if you don't manage it yourself. You have to decide where you want to go, what you want to do, and then make sure you communicate it. And then figure out, okay, what are the skill sets? What are the, attributes that I need to have to get that opportunity? And then start doing it from now, right? Start building those skill sets now, right? Really quick little anecdote. I wanted to move into strategy from finance. So what did I do? I literally turned a traditional budgeting, planning, and analysis job, I turned it into a strategy job. How did I do that? Because while I was producing all the financial reports, I just took the extra step of analyzing the numbers and giving them insights. And then after I did that consistently for a year, I went to my boss and said, hey, what if we actually it was my boss's boss. What if we change the team to strategy planning and analysis? Because we're doing all this strategic work, right? We're doing all this analysis, and he's like, oh, I love that. So he did. And guess what? I went on to be then the CFO of the strategic investments business, where they really appreciated the strategy part of my experience, right? I created that within my current role. I didn't have to, like so many people, and I always advise my clients, don't go for the role that you need to get the role. No, go right for what you want, right? And create the opportunities to get the relevant experience within your current role. And there's always opportunities to do that, okay? But don't, I'm going to do this for 2 years and then this for 2 years. If it makes sense to do that for that particular path, great. But if you can skip the 2-year stint to get these skills by getting these skills in your current role, or by doing a little extra training, or by doing some volunteer work, skip right to where you want to go, okay? This is key. If you remember nothing else of today, this is going to be the most valuable thing. This is going to help you get paid. This is going to help you get promoted. Track your accomplishments as they happen. You just finished a project. Write it down. Oh, I finished this project. These are the results. These are the ways that they impacted the company. If you can't figure this out yourself, go sit down with your manager and say, hey, how was this used? What was the impact? Did this help us make any more money? Did this help us save any more money? Oh, do you have a sense of the numbers? Work with them right as the project is finished. I want to understand the impact of my work. So many people today, I hear this, especially 23-year-olds. Oh my God, I'm like, oh, I'm burnt out. Oh, I'm so tired. I'm like, you're 23, you just started. You don't have the right to be tired. What are you talking about? I wasn't tired until I had 10 years, 18 hours a day working. Like, why are you tired? Like, what are you talking about? Oh, I'm burnt out. And then I asked them, and then what's at the core of it? It's not really burnout, right? It's, oh, I feel like a monkey could do my work. I feel like anyone could do my work. Oh, I feel like the work that I do is not valued. You don't know whether the work you do is not valued because you haven't gone and asked, how is that work being used, right? How is it impacting the organization? So ask, and then write it down. This is going to help you in many ways, right? As you're tracking your accomplishments throughout the year, it's going to make it that much easier to do your self-assessment in the middle or end of the year because it's a copy-paste exercise, right? The year that I got promoted, I increased my salary, no joke, by 40%. 45% actually, year over year. I had 15 pages of bulleted accomplishments. You know what my performance management discussion was like? We have no idea how you did all of this. Like, you blew us away. Like, how did you even accomplish it? How did you find enough time in the day? Right? Because I had it all there and they couldn't deny it. All there clearly examined. And then you said, the only feedback we're going to give you is, 15 pages is too long. Like keep 3 pages max next time. Like this is too much, but amazing work, right? So track your accomplishments as they happen. If a stakeholder sends you an email saying, "Oh, amazing job," PDF it, save it in a folder. All right? Because it's going to be that much easier for you to talk about what you did later. Work with, we talked about that one. Quantify your impact. Get numbers to the extent that you can, right? Again, this is not only going to help you with your performance management, promotion, getting paid more, right? Because when your exceeds expectations, you're not talking about a 0 to 3% raise. You're talking about sometimes a 10, 12, 15, 20% raise in a lot of these organizations, right? Those raises are saved for the people that are at the top of the performance spectrum. And many times the people in our community are there, but we're just not communicating it effectively, okay? Discuss and here's another one, okay? With performance measurement. At the beginning of the year, at the beginning of a new role, sit down with your manager and clearly discuss and document expectations and objectives, right? Set a clear criteria upon which your performance will be measured. For some of you that work at startups that don't have a performance measurement or a performance management framework in place, this is even more important, right? Than those of us who are in corporate who have, like these structured ways, right? A lot of these startups, everybody's like, oh, everybody's wearing a million hats and, no one's actually paying attention. You need to take this seriously, right? You need to manage this yourself, okay? And have that conversation. Be very, very explicit. And then what happens immediately after that conversation? You put it all in an email and you send it to your manager and you say, please respond if you agree. And now, at the end of the year, when they try to evaluate you on some other criteria, hey, here it is documented. You said these were the things that were important. I checked all those boxes. So how can they rate you anything other than excellent at that point, right? Well, you set a clear expectation. Now, here's the step beyond that. You want to be someone who's exceeding expectations, who's getting the big raises, who's getting the promotions. After you have that discussion and you establish a clear criteria on which your performance is going to be evaluated, in other words, how do I meet expectations of this job? Then you say, hey, what can I do to go above and beyond the call of duty? What can I do that's extra? What can I do that's going to put me in that exceeding expectations route? What's going to put me in the top 1% of the company, right? What else can I do? And your manager is going to sit down. Maybe he's going to have to think about it, or she's going to have to think about it and come back to you. But they're going to come up with something. And then it's going to be up to you whether you want to do that extra thing and then maybe 5 more extra things. So that when you're coming to that performance discussion, it's very, very clear that you're going to get the top rating and you're going to get the top raise. And if there's a promotion, it's yours, okay? And these things work. Again, this is not just my experience. This is thousands of people that I've done this with. That is all. So thank you very much all for your attention. And I want to just very briefly, and I'm sorry that we're running a bit low on time, but I do want to take questions. If anyone has any questions. Yes.
So first of all, thank you so much. That was really interesting. I'm looking forward to the next few sessions. You said a lot about, and I think that resonated with me, about how you should never share too much, knowing that a co-worker is a co-worker. So, again, that's something everyone learns the hard way. But, there is this, especially in corporate environment these days, there's this buzzword of authenticity, of coming across as exactly who you are. So how do you balance that? Because on one end, it's all about limiting what you share about yourself, not sharing too much, which could someday be used against you. But then at the other end, there's also this expectation that, you need to come across as being yourself, and you're not trying to be too controlled and too composed, etc., etc. So how do you, any thoughts on you can share on that?
Yeah, thank you for the question. Very good question. The thing with authenticity is, let's just think about when we meet someone who comes across as authentic to us, what makes them come across as authentic? Is it them sharing secrets about themselves or their lives, or what is it for you in your experience?
They just come across as being natural. They're not trying to pretend to be something.
Yeah. And that's exactly it, right? You can be yourself, quote unquote, right? You don't need to change who you are to be successful in the workplace. And how do you do that, right? You show up, right? You don't feel like, hey, I need to change certain aspects of myself to fit in here. Because again, anyone who does that is always wrong. And it happens to all of us. I felt like I wore a mask for so long in the corporate setting because I thought I needed to be this way and that way. And the reality was, no, I didn't, right? Because at the end of the day, you'll hear all of this noise about what's important. Oh yeah, you have to be authentic and you have to be building your full self. And it's all noise.
Yes.
It's all noise. At the end of the day, think about what the people running that company care about, right? Think about what that company's mission is, and you know, what are they out there to accomplish? What are they out there to do in the world? Okay? That's what matters. How am I contributing to that? And the people whose opinions matter, again, strategic networking, because there's going to be all kinds of people who are going to tell you these things are important. Noise. What actually matters is excellent work first, excellent character next. You want to be someone who's considered authentic? Do what you say you're going to do. Show up. Be consistent. Consistency is key. So that's been my experience, and I know it can be really confusing because, you know, there's all, again, it's just try to turn off the noise and focus on what's important. And if you feel like you can't be authentically yourself in a work situation, that might be a sign from Allah that there's something better out there for you. Is that helpful? Okay. Yes?
A lot of your conversation seems to be about being opportunistic and turning every situation into an advantage. But how do you actually bring up situations where you are overwhelmed and your responsibilities are just too much for you to handle, and while also thinking about, I still want to grow my career?
Yeah, great question. So as I mentioned briefly at the end of the discussion, right? No is a very powerful word that we all need to learn, right? Because at the end of the day, your managers, your boss, a company will take as much from you as you're willing to give. And even if they hollow you out and leave you empty, they're going to continue to take until you say enough. Okay? So we need to learn to use the word no. And how do we do that, right? Because it's all about strategies. How do we do that effectively? If your boss is asking you, right, or your manager, whoever's asking you for more than you can handle, your plate is full, you say, okay, great. What's the priority on this ask? I have all of these things that I'm already working on, which I understand to be high priority. Should I take one of these things out because I'm at capacity right now so that I can do that? And what they're going to say 9 times out of 10 is, oh no, it's okay, I'll find someone else. Or you know what, I'll move this project off of your plate onto someone else's plate so that, because I really want you, because of your skill set, to work on this, right? And so you work closely with open communication with your management to say, hey, this is my capacity, I'm being open, this is what I can do excellently, right? I've reached that capacity, so if you want me to take this on, I'm more than happy to. If it's something that you feel that you can be successful at. But one of these things is going to have to move, right? And you manage your capacity in that way, and saying no is okay. And people will understand, especially when you explain it. If you just say, oh no, I'm too busy, they'll be like, oh. But if you say, no, I'm busy, and here's the things that I'm busy with, and I understand these to be priorities for the organization, and you can manage your capacity. And be very, very careful, be very mindful and protective of your capacity, of your mental and spiritual and physical health, right? I read recently, when this really inspired me, that the Prophet ﷺ was a martial artist, right? He encouraged people to work out and to exercise, right? We talk about mental health. This is really important. We have to take care of ourselves. And saying no is one of the biggest gifts that you could ever have in this life. And people will respect you for it. Is that helpful?
Yeah.
Yes.
Thank you so much for your talk, Alexander. I just wanted to ask a question about, you mentioned about, understanding your bosses know a little bit more than us and having sort of that check in our ego. But if you're trying to pursue something, and I can give an example, for instance, I was working on a podcast where we were doing an episode on ecotourism, and my boss was trying to pick someone who was quite fluffy, didn't really know what he, like, the topic, and I was pressing for this woman who actually knew what she was talking about and written a book about it. But I don't know the reason she wanted to go for him, but because I felt quite passionately that this was an important topic and I wanted people to know about it, I was pushing for her. But that brought me into kind of a conflict with my boss. So how do we manage decisions, especially with our bosses? And our bosses aren't perfect, we're not perfect, but you're pressing for something that you think is of value and will add value to people and listeners and to the project, but at the same time respecting and deferring to the fact that this person's obviously more senior than me as well.
Yeah. So the question is, sometimes we might have more insights, right, on something that is going to make a project, or in this case, a podcast, more successful than the manager who's making the decision has, right? And we're often we find ourselves in that situation. And in this case, maybe that manager, for whatever reason, felt strongly about the decision they made. So there's a couple of things here. Number one, if you want to influence someone, you have to make the business case, right? So taking any kind of emotion out of it, these are the reasons why I feel this person is more qualified as a guest, as a podcast guest. They have these qualifications. They have these other things. You can refer to these other talks and you can get a sense yourself by listening to her. I felt that this speaker, while he's, maybe he's great, but I felt that he's a bit deficient in terms of this aspect. So I really feel like our listeners would benefit more from this person, right? And you make the business case. At the end of the day, we have to respect the fact that in some cases we have a hierarchy, and a manager will take on our opinions, right? And we should give them when we have them, especially when we feel there's value to add. Control your tongue, use it when there's value to add, right? But once we've done that and we explain it, make the business case, and if they still decide to go another way, we have to respect that they are the decision maker in this case, even if we know that the decision is wrong. That's why some of us start our own businesses. Because you know what? Hey, we have a better way to do this, right? So we're going to. Okay, so I think we might have time for maybe one more.
Oh, I think the business
No?
is
Okay.
10 minutes. So
Okay. Yeah, inshallah. Thank you all so much. Really appreciate it.
We hope you enjoyed our podcast. If you're inspired by the work that we're doing at the IC and want to help keep it going, subscribe to our podcasts, follow us on social media, donate to help support us at icnyu.org, and most importantly, keep us in your continued du'as. Until next time, inshallah. Assalamu alaikum.